us now a little bit about thing which you touch in forbidden archaeology, but expand more in human devolution, and that is the fact that ancient humans, at least some of it, were probably more advanced than we think, or even more advanced than we are now. Did you find some artifacts that supported this idea?
Well, there's two sources of evidence for the advancement of human civilizations in the past. One source is the record of the rocks, the archaeological record, what you can find by digging into the earth. And then, but that method doesn't always work. There have been studies made by scientists who are interested in the environment. They point out, okay, we have an advanced technological civilization today worldwide. We have factories, automobiles, airplanes, so many things going on, so many big, huge cities with millions of people. What would happen to this evidence if human beings were to disappear from the earth today and everything was left, all the remains of our civilization, our skyscraper buildings, our automobiles, our factories, everything is there? What would happen to it? Scientists have carefully studied this, and they've determined that after a few thousand years, almost everything would be gone. The kind of stuff that we regard as high tech doesn't last very long in terms of the geological record, because metals, except for gold, will oxidize. In other words, and then organic materials will decay. Buildings will burn, there'll be tidal waves, there'll be tsunamis, the plants will take over the cities, they'll break everything down, the buildings will collapse. After a few thousand years, there's almost nothing that would be left. So our high-tech stuff doesn't preserve very well. But there's another type of evidence, which is the writings of these ancient civilizations, what knowledge they've preserved in them. And they describe some very amazing things, like in the Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the historical writings of India. There are descriptions of advanced aircraft. They were called vimanas, like
Yes.
there were spaceships. They could travel from place to place on this planet, from one planet to another, and not just in the sense of going through space to another location in the same time-space continuum, but to higher dimensions of reality where there are different kinds of civilizations. We also have to consider what is really advanced. Uh, is advancement, does that mean creating material technology or that distracts us from the real purposes of human life? Or is real advanced civilization based on a principle of simple living, high thinking? In other words, be as natural as possible. Why build factories and automobiles that are killing thousands of people every year? You know, these are questions we have to ask ourselves. What is real advancement of civilization? But to your point, more directly, the Vedic texts also describe very elaborate, well-developed cities, not based on the kinds of skyscrapers and things that we have today, but with everything planned very nicely. There are accommodations for all kinds of people. There are government buildings like the descriptions of Dwarka or Hastinapur or Ayodhya, these very beautiful towns with gardens, parks, lakes, the kinds of places people like to live, not like our crowded cities with their sometimes not very good housing. So these things were there. Uh, Also, I mean, speaking of warfare, they also had weapons resembling modern modern nuclear weapons. Now, I mean, that's an uncomfortable topic, but these were types of weapons, although they were very powerful, they could be targeted to in such a way that innocent people aren't affected. So, yeah, there are lots of descriptions of advanced technologies based on more subtle principles than we're familiar with today, like these vimanas, have to be seen in terms of the Vedic cosmology, which is based on the idea that it's not just ordinary matter that technology can be based on. There can be subtle material energies that are used in a different way. Like there's a description of a Vimana in the Srimad Bhagavatam that was manifested by Kardama Muni, whose wife was Devahuti. And he manifested this flying machine, this Vimana, by his yogic powers. In other words, by meditation and manipulating the subtle energies, he was able to manifest a Vimana that was described as being a flying palace. It was a very wonderful place. And he traveled with his wife, Devahuti, through all the different planetary systems for a long time. And it's kind of interesting. It's described in the Bhagavad Purana how in this Vimana there were robotic birds that were so real that the real birds that were also in the garden chambers of this huge spaceship would kind of chase after them and try to interact with them like they were real birds. And I kind of found that interesting because today in warfare, militaries use drones for various purposes to deliver weapons or to observe what the opposing forces are doing. So if so the American military has designed drones that look like birds. Because if you see a regular drone, buzzing around your military base, you shoot it down. But I thought it was kind of interesting that uh, modern militaries are using drones that look like birds. And I read one description, like one of these drones was flying around looking like a bird, and hawks would, try to take it down, thinking it was another bird. And the hawks, some of them, they eat other birds. So I thought it was kind of interesting that these ancient Sanskrit literatures, 5,000 or more years old, describing events that took place perhaps many millions of years ago, are talking about robotic birds so real that other birds interact with them like they were another bird. But in any case, so that Vimana was of Cardamomuni was made from subtle material elements. Like if we want to make on our level of reality a flying machine, we have to mine metals, refine them, make them into sheets, you know, we have to have factories, shops, to make an airplane, that will fly. And many of them crash. But, this Vimana of Cardamomuni was made with another science, a more advanced type of science than we're used to. So he could manifest with his knowledge of the subtle science this huge flying craft that he traveled with his wife in all over the cosmos. Then there are Vimanas that come from the spiritual level of reality, not the subtle mental energies, but the realm of pure consciousness. And there's an account in the Bhagavad Purana of Dhruva, who was a king. And at the end of his life, he went into the Himalayan mountains and he went into a state of meditation. He went into yogic trance. And from the spiritual level of reality, a Vimana came down, illuminating the place like it was the full moon descending and shining into the mountain retreat of Dhruva. And when the Vimana came close to him, there were two pilots in it. He noticed two beings in the Vimana, and they said, "We've come to take you to the spiritual level of reality. You've qualified yourself." So Dhruva circumambulated, walked around the Vimana, and as he did so, the energy from it transformed his material body into a spiritual body. And then he entered the craft, and then it took him through the various material planetary systems up to the level of pure consciousness or spirit. And of course, there are Vimanas made of ordinary material elements, metals. Like there was a king on this planet named Shalva. He was on the side of the forces of darkness in the cosmos, because there are forces of darkness. And he 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 approached the engineer of the forces of darkness in the universe, Maya Donovan, and got from him this weapon, this military spacecraft that was made of metal. But it had, and he used it to attack the city of Dwarka, which was the headquarters of Krishna when he came to Earth. And he attacked it with energy beam weapons. And he was also able to manifest holographic soldiers that would appear on the ground and appear to attack the city. And this Vimana had all these very unusual powers. It could project holographic images. It could appear in several places at once and confuse the soldiers on the ground who were trying to shoot it down. It's very amazing, elaborate description of a material Vimana. So in the Vedic cosmology, you have a multi-level universe with levels of ordinary matter, subtle matter, and a totally non-material level.
That is really fascinating. And all this we can learn from Puranas, isn't it? It's the main source.
Yeah,
Mm.
yes. Well, Srimad Bhagavatam is another name for the Bhagavad Purana, which has all these Vimanas are described in that book.
Yes, we also have it in Croatian. I will put also below this video link where viewers which are interested in this topic can learn more about it.